How did you see the hit, firstly, and what are you expecting as an outcome from this?
Yeah, first of all, it was wild because it was the start of a few melees that kicked off around the Gabba. For the next, half an hour, there was just spot fights breaking out.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the Footy Gameday Squad show. I'll be your host today, Tom, and what we're doing is a review for the round of 21 in the AFL, and I'm joined by the best, Callum. Brother, what is going on today, mate? How are you?
Tom, I'm good. I've had a good week in my fantasy, and I was at the Gabba yesterday for a good game there, so I'm pumped. I'm keen to talk about footy.
Yeah, mate, looks like you destroyed the weekend, not only in Gameday Squad, but yeah, you were there at the Gabba. How good, mate? What was the atmosphere like?
Really, really good. So we were sitting with a whole bunch of Carlton fans. Mum and Dad were a Carlton supporters, so they were keen and they were getting amongst it. But really good crowd. Like, I reckon it was a genuine 50-50 split of fans, which made things interesting, particularly early on when it was a close contest and when the Blues were coming back late. But yeah, very strange game. Like, Lions getting up by 40 and then almost throwing away another lead. But it was good. It was good to be back at the footy.
Yeah, bloody oath. But let's get into it, hey. As you said, we've got plenty to talk about for the round of 21. And how we start off this show is doing our studs and duds review. So we're going to go 3, 2, 1, throw it back between me and Callum, talk about the players who played well and didn't do so well. But let me start it. I'm on the good side here. I'm on the side of players that played well. These are the players you want in your fantasy team for this week. And we're going to start it off with third place, which is Rory Laird, the midfielder from the Adelaide Crows. And if you don't know who Rory Laird is by now, and you've been watching these shows, then I'm not sure what's going on, because I haven't shut up about this guy over the past couple of weeks and how good he's been, not only for my team, but just in the AFL. The numbers he's putting up are huge every single week. It's not even a surprise that he comes up in the top 3 for the studs of the week now, because he just does it literally every single week. 158 Gameday Squad fantasy points in this one. Another top 3 finish. If he doesn't finish in the top 3, honestly, at this point, I'd be disappointed. So credit to Rory Laird, mate. You are an absolute jet. Every week you come out.
Fire, hey.
Dude.
I reckon, yeah, if you haven't heard by Rory who he is now, then you're not playing fantasy, because there's no way that people aren't playing and wanting him in their team. He's got to be number one at the moment. He's been magnificent since the bye. I'm on the dud side, so I'm going to be looking at the players that didn't have the best week, and someone who probably was the second best fantasy player since the bye is that found himself on a bronze medal here, and that's Zachy Merritt. Had his worst game for the year, worst game of the year by some distance. Only 18 touches, a mark, and a tackle, and he finished with 71 points, which doesn't sound terrible, but for the standard that he's been running at, which has been with Laird, it's quite a drop off. So bronze medal dud of the week goes to him.
Mate, fantasy managers would be scratching their heads. This guy had 200 fantasy points last week. 200.
All in the second half too.
Yeah, so like to have that type of turnaround in a game is quite literally insane. Darcy Parish, I don't want to mention it. Should I mention it? Is his inclusion into the Essendon Bombers the reason Zach Merritt played so bad? Is there now more hands to feed, more mouths to feed? Is that why he played bad, or did you just see this as a one-off and Zachy Merritt will bounce back?
I think overall, the Essendon played really poorly. So they've been playing quite good footy for the last month, and I just think they they just were flat on the weekend. So I want to see how they go after, with against a good side, or a side when they're playing competitively, to see if that's the case and there's too many mouths to feed, or if it's just a bad day for Essendon as a whole.
Yeah, love that. All right, but let me take away with my second medal getter. Second place is Maxi Gawn. Now, he doesn't know too much about finishing in second place. He loves to finish in first. And the big man is back. He is back with a bang as well. He's playing really good. And midway through the year, we threw a lot of shade at Max Gawn. We were talking about how him and the Luke Jackson pairing and combination isn't going to work, and it's going to affect both of their fantasy production. Not this round. 173 Gameday Squad fantasy points for Maxi Gawn, which I tell you what was a bloody good game for a Friday night.
Ooh, the
Demons up against Collingwood, and Collingwood have won. I think this is now 11 straight games they have won. So despite Max Gawn's huge day, wasn't enough to get him over the line in the end. His 2 most notable stats in this one were 21 kicks and 10 marks. But yeah, as I mentioned, not enough to keep off those blazing hot pies. How long is that streak going to keep going? Because seems like it's never ending at this point, and they keep knocking off the best in the comp.
Yeah, they've been in some great form. I'm really keen to see how they go once they get to finals. Quite a young team. I can't wait to see someone like Dacos in the finals. But yeah, on Maxi Gorn, he might have finished second here, but it's not his fault that the Pies Demons finished second in that game.
Definitely.
So tough one for him. Someone who we also love on this show is going to get my silver medal for Dud of the Week, and that's Tom Stewart. So he also had his lowest score of the year, if you don't include the game where he went off injured earlier in the year. He only had 62 points, and he really hurt anyone that would have been playing him this week. 18 kicks, 2 marks was his stats, but I don't have the exact numbers here. I haven't been able to find them. But at halftime, he was only on like 4 points or something. And I think even at three-quarter time, he was even, not doing so well. He had a few free kicks against, which were hurting. So, not only did he have a poor game by his standards, anyone that would have been watching along would have been just freaking out for the first 3 quarters, being like, is this guy going to score over 10 points? So fortunately, he did, but not didn't do well enough to avoid that silver medal. So, yeah, congrats to him for taking that one out.
Yeah, I don't know if that's an award you want to be taking out, and if he wants it, congratulations for it.
But, I'm going to give him one. I'll give him one.
We'll move on. That's a pretty good second nomination.
Gold medal, yeah. Who was our standout for the week? Tell me.
Gold medal. This is a new player onto the segment. It is Luke Ryan from the Dockers, a defender. And speaking of flying under the radar, Luke Ryan is definitely going to become part of that group. And it's only because there's such an abundance of good defenders in AFL fantasy this year that it's hard to warrant starting someone like Luke Ryan over a lot of the other guys in the comp. But this week he had 177 Gameday Squad fantasy points, and his 2 most notable stats were his 25 kicks and 15 marks. He had a really great game for Freo. Killed it. Was just an absolute magnet. Was everywhere, it felt like. He was just spawning all over the field, getting the ball in his hands. So, yeah, great game from him. Credit to him. And he is the gold medalist for the round of 21. Congratulations. That is one you do want.
That is an award you
do want.
Exactly. We haven't been speaking about him a lot, though, but this has been coming. So the last 3 scores before this were all over 100. He's been knocking on the door, and this is the big score that's announced himself with that gold medal. So, yeah, really interested to see if he can keep this up for the finals, and, yeah, see if he can carry this in and as the Freo try and, build on this form and take out that flag.
Yeah, for sure. But what about your gold medal, the one that no one wants in the AFL? Who's going to take it out this week and why?
Yeah, so unfortunately goes to one of your boys. Benny Keys had himself an absolute shocker. So he only had 5 kicks, 3 tackles, and we know he loves a free against. He had 3 of them. So he finished with only 53 GDS points, which for someone who all year has just been dominant and almost a lock for that, team of the year that we've been working towards.
Yep.
He's now actually dropped off a fair bit. This really hurts his average and it could possibly make him miss out on that team of the year selection. We've only got 2 more weeks to go, so he doesn't have a lot of time to make up for it. But yeah, I wonder if when he's sitting back on his early holidays, because the Crows have been just as good as Port this year, if he sits there and he wonders, hey, if it wasn't for that game, I might have been in team of the year. So yeah, he gets a gold medal, but maybe he doesn't
I love this.
Yeah,
because he doesn't. I had some shade thrown at by yourself at me for taking out my silver Benny Keys a couple of weeks ago for a silver Noah Anderson from the Suns. So tell me this, if you could go back in time and look at it, is that not so bad anymore, or are you still disgusted in my decision?
I stand by my logic, but hey,
people have bad rounds. It happens. It is.
I was going to say, logic doesn't mean much, right? When you're sitting there smiling and Anderson's been on fire and Keys hasn't. So yeah, you look like a genius now. Noah's been in some great form, but yeah, Keys, big gold medal.
Alrighty, that's going to wrap us up for our studs and duds review for the round of 21. Some great names in there and some names that are probably never going to want to see themselves in Callum's list of duds again. But let's move on. We're going to go to the player radar. And what we do on the player radar is this is an opportunity for me and Callum to mention players that we maybe don't get to mention in these studs and duds, or even our Dynasty Watch players as well. These are players that we want to talk about and let you know how we feel about them, their fantasy impact, and maybe these are players you should be considering taking into your team. So Callum, I heard you got a good one for me this week, and this one, from my understanding, is close to home. So if you want to go take it away, Elaborate. I'm interested to hear who you've got on your player radar.
Yeah, you're right. Someone close to home for you. I've gone with James Rowbottom, and I've only gone with the one player this week because I really wanted to take a bit of a deep dive into this guy because I really rate him as a player, and I really, really rate him as a dynasty prospect. And I know you were going to talk about him as well, so I know we've probably got a bit to say on him here, but for good reason. So this former number 25 pick he's having a really good year this year. He's been consistent again.
Yes,
he had a breakout year last year, really nailed down that spot in the Swans midfield. And again, this year has been a solidifying year to really make sure that he is on that 22 and in that team sheet every week. And he's doing a good job out of it. Yep. But he's in a bit of a transition period at the moment where he's averaging less than 50% CBAs, which is about 10% less than Warner, who everyone's talking about as an absolute stud. And we both agree he is an absolute stud. But why I really like him and why I really wanted to talk about Rowbottom as a prospect was going forward. We're going to see Parker, Papley, and of course Kennedy, who's just had another setback with injury, all leave that midfield over the next year or so, or start to decrease their time. And for me, that leaves a very, very tasty midfield of Mills, Warner, and Rowie. And I think he's going to be one of those three, and I think he's going to be eating for years to come. So he's played every game this year, barring that one with suspension, which was a bit dubious, and he played all the games last year as well. So the first thing you need in fantasy sports is availability, and he's had that in abundance. He doesn't get injured, he shows up. And what we've seen over the last few weeks is he's just been getting better and better and better with 3 scores over 100, which is showing that development. Yep. And the big thing, and probably why people don't talk about him as much, is because he just doesn't have the flair and the goals that Warner gets. So he gets the touches, he just doesn't get the goals. Now, I still give Warner the edge on the dynasty board, but Rowie is fast moving up there. And at 21, I still think he could be an absolute jet for the next 10 years. So, and this isn't a Swans team, which, you know, I know how excited you are. Awesome young core. Oh, yes. They're only going to be getting better and better, and we know how important that is for fantasy output as well. So, yeah, I think he's the real deal. I wanted to highlight him because if you don't know about him, you should be looking into him. Because when we get our transfer mark up and running, he's going to be one of the first players I target. So,
mate, take a bow. What an analysis there from Callum from Gameday Squad. But let me add on that, mate. When I watch him, he's one of my favourite players, and he is a hard ball getter. He does not shy away from any contact. And you know who he really reminds me of? And I'm going to do a comparison in terms of the midfield and the team, is the Demons. And, you know, you spoke about how he's not going to be the star player. He's not the Petrarca or Oliver. He's the Jack Viney. He's the guy that gets in there and does all the dirty work every single week, but he just flies under the radar and quietly racks up a juicy amount of stats every single week. And as you mentioned, 3 games over triple digits now in recent form. That is some form that just, it's staring at you. You can't ignore it anymore. He's really good at footy, and I do believe, like yourself, that he's a dynasty option that is going to be essential for a lot of teams over the next 5 to 7 years. So he's someone I'm looking at as well. Yeah, I loved your take on it. I agreed with what you said.
Such a good comparison with the Melbourne guys, because I think it's so right. I don't think he'll get to an Oliver or Petrarca level, but he's going to be so consistent. And the thing about GDS is if you can go out and nab a diamond card for him with that 1.4 multiplier, that's almost as good as a silver or a gold or a platinum, those other guys. So if you're one of those lucky guys that goes out and gets one of those 100 Rowbottoms, you're going to be very, very happy with yourself. But that's enough about me and Rowbottom. Who else did you have down? I think you said you had someone pretty controversial on here that you wanted to talk about all weekend, and then he went and got himself in a bit of trouble yesterday.
Yeah, let's get into it then. You've given away way too much already. It's Patrick Cripps from the Carlton Blues. And, I was really impressed with Patrick Cripps and his form as of recent. We mentioned his CBAs and his time in the midfield was decreasing at some parts of the season. Now, we weren't sure whether that was a strategic move from the coaching staff or whether it was to fill in voids from the injuries, because the Blues have had a couple of injuries over the early part of this season. But Patrick Cripps was getting a lot more time in the midfield, and his fantasy production was only benefiting because of this. But over the weekend, Callum's at the Gabba. He's enjoying a lovely, lovely game in between the Brisbane Lions and the Carlton Blues. And Paddy Cripps puts on a pretty big hit. Now, at the time when I saw it, I didn't think it was too bad, but a lot of reviews later and a lot of different camera angles, he might be in a bit of trouble. Callum, because you were there live, I want to get your perspective on it first. How did you see the hit, firstly, and what are you expecting as an outcome from this?
Yeah, first of all, it was wild because it was the start of a few melees that kicked off around the Gabba. For the next half an hour, there was just spot fights breaking out. So it was fantastic from a viewing point of view. The incident itself, I saw it, but it happened so quick, and it was right in front of me. But it happened so quick. Even on looking back on the replays, it took me a few to actually figure out what had happened, because the Lions fans wanted blood. The people beside me were just going ballistic at him. But I was like, oh, what did he do wrong? Yeah. What did he do wrong? It was only when I sat down this morning and actually watched it back that I realised, you can't make contact with the head. It's like whether he did it intentionally, whether he was trying to hurt him, whether it was just an accident, doesn't matter. We know the AFL is what it is at the moment, and he's going to miss the rest of the year. Hopefully for Blues fans, he's around for round 1 of the finals if they make it there. But his regular fantasy season is done, which leaves him in an interesting spot. I'll touch on him a bit later in another segment we've got coming up, so I might save it for then. But it does mean his season's over, which does create a headache for a few people if you've still been running with him in your team the last few weeks.
Yeah, there's plenty of headaches going around unless you're a Welsh owner right now. Your stocks are flying through the bloody roof. There is only one man in that midfield who's going to take over a game, and it's our boy, Walsh. And we spoke about him so much in the preseason, and everyone thought that he was going to be the most fantasy viable option out of the Blues midfield. Cripps has probably been that guy this year, but, as you said, with him now coming out, that leaves a huge window of opportunity, and I'm super excited for what fantasy coaches are going to do in response to this. What other players they're going to start chucking in the lineup. Who else gets to go in the midfield for the Blues? Who's going to get a spot in that rotation? Definitely a lot of food for thought if you're a fantasy manager right now, and it's exciting times. Unless you're a Cripps owner, then you wouldn't be too happy with the result on the weekend. Yeah, see, Callum's pretty upset. He brought up all the Cripps stock, all of the real estate on his island earlier on in the year, which, look, it has paid some dividends to an extent, because maybe there weren't a lot of people out there who believed he could be a top fantasy option this year. So in the long run, I don't think your take was too bad. I think you were quite right in terms of
We'll get to that because I touch on it a bit later. Sorry, there's some work going on behind me, so I'd love to sit there and yell back at you. But take us through who you've got the other ones, and then when this racket stops, I'll tell you what's going on with my Paddy Cripps take.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I've only got 2 more for you, and they'll be a bit quicker, these ones. Josh Dacos. With so much attention going to Nick Dacos, which, to be fair, is completely valid. All the attention should be on Nick Dacos. But people seem to forget about Josh Dacos, and over his past 7 games, he has cracked triple-digit scoring in Gameday Squad in 5 of them. It's hard to have a Josh Dacos as a starting or a lock in the midfield right now for your respective fantasy teams. But if you're a fantasy manager that has a bit of depth issue inside of your midfield and you need someone to come in there and do a job, Josh Dacos is not a bad option. With him getting close to triple-digit scoring over the past couple of weeks, that is some fantasy viable numbers, and he gives me a lot of confidence putting him into that midfield as of right now to fill in a void or a spot.
I was going to say, if it wasn't for Nick Dacos, everyone would be talking about Josh Dacos like he's an absolute weapon. But having his little brother there, I think, is definitely taken the spotlight off him, or set that bar even higher, which is crazy
you took
thought.
The words right out of my mouth. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what has happened. And, with Taylor Adams going down with injury as well, there's more time in the midfield. We just spoke about how that opportunity can equal success and productivity. So I'm looking at Josh Dacos. I like what I see over the next couple of weeks. I'll be keeping a close eye on him. And then the last player for my player radar, rounding it all off, is Noah Cumberland. And it's his first season of AFL footy. The 43rd pick in the 2019 NAB draft. But my word, was his presence felt for Richmond. Not this weekend, but the weekend prior. I'm talking more particularly the Lions game, where Richmond went there and pulled off the comeback of all comebacks. They looked like they were out. There was no way they were going to come back in. And if it wasn't for some Tommy J. Lynch heroics in the second half, he wouldn't have been overshadowed by his performance, because the first 3 goals for the Richmond Tigers were all credited to Noah Cumberland in that game. He's then come out the next weekend. He's kicked 2 goals too. He's in some goal scoring form. That's 5 goals over the past 2 weeks, which is nearly better than Jack Revolt, who's a goal kicking machine for the Richmond Tigers over his whole career. Noah Cumberland is a sneaky little pick that I'm looking at. And if you look at his build and the player that he is, he comes up the ground a lot higher than your Lynches and your Revolts. He has more opportunity to get involved and get more kicks. I'm keeping an eye on him as a dynasty prospect. But
I
Callum,
love it, yeah.
what have you got to say here about Noah Cumberland? Did you watch the performances, by the way?
Yeah, I've been seeing him. I've been keeping an eye on him. What I love about him and why he's such a... Why it's good you've got your eye on him is because he scores goals, and we know how important that is for forwards in fantasy. We do value scoring goals a little bit higher than some of the other platforms in proportion. So the fact he scored 13 goals in his, 5 games is pretty impressive. The fact he's also scored 10 behinds on top of that just shows you that he's getting 4 shots off a game minimum, 5 even. So yeah, really impressive.
Exactly right.
Yeah, I love that you've got him in there.
Yeah, we got to watch him. But let's get into our next segment. We do some team reflection on the teams that we put out over Gameday Squad for our weekly and seasonal competitions. And guys, if you're not sure what Gameday Squad is Australia's first and only fantasy platform utilizing blockchain technology. We have all of our links down below in the description. Go check it out. Sign up. It is free, so why not? And let's get into it though. Right and wrong. Callum, I know you've been itching to talk about this because we just had a sneak peek into the player that you might be bringing up. So why don't you take it away this week? I want to hear what you got right and wrong.
Yeah, so I went very broad with my right this one. I couldn't give you a particular thing from the week I did, but I listened to the advice we've been saying all along, and I picked players based on their ability and not the rarity of the cards that I have. We've heard so many people who have gone out and said, no, I've got a diamond card, I have to play him, or I've got this platinum, I have to play him, even though they're a B, C player at best. But no, I stuck with my guns. I've been picking players that I want, regardless of rarity, and going from there. And it's doing quite well for me. I had my best performance, which we'll get into in a second. But yeah, really happy that I'm sticking with that because it is so tempting. You see that blue sitting there, or even those that are lucky enough to have legends floating around. I'm sure the temptation is there to play them. But yeah, not their smart move.
Would be an understatement. It is a test of your ability and control. Like, I agree with you. If you have a card there that's a higher graded one, it's so easy just to be like, yeah, well, he doesn't need to play as good and he'll still play better. No, that is the best thing you can do is stick to your guns and know that if a player is going to be better over a week, it shouldn't matter whether it's 1 or 2 grades higher. Stick with your guns, play the player who you believe is going to have the higher fantasy output.
Yeah, too right. What I got wrong, though, I did tell you I was going to circle back to Paddy Cripps, and this is where I talk about it. So I did say he was going to win the 2022 Brownlow medal, and he will be suspended. So regardless of if some miracle happens and he does end up polling enough votes, he will be ineligible for the prize. So yeah, disappointing.
It's unfortunate.
Because I tell you what, I was flying after the first few rounds, and I'd load up for him to be leading after round 5. But unfortunately, yeah, he's not going to do that. But Tom, I know you've asked me this off air. You asked me whether I was going to say if Patrick Cripps had a successful year or an unsuccessful year based on now that his season's over. I told you I'd save it for the air. So I'm going to tell you that I think Patrick Cripps' 6th season has still been a huge success. We were always wondering, can he bounce back to that form where he had his MVP? He has, and there's been times where this year he hasn't had to play his role because he's been playing as a ruckman or he's been playing as something else, really trying to hold that midfield team together. And I think next year he's going to be better for it. Walsh is going to be better for it, and Cripps might next year still come out and win that Brownlow. So yeah, really positive signs. There was some concerns there that maybe Cripps was sort of a player we'd never see back at his best. But no, if I'm a Cripps owner, I'm still holding onto his cards for next year. So yeah, congrats Cripps for coming back. I know COVID must have been tough for him. But yeah, very happy with him, and I'm not selling any of that any of that stock I have on Cripps Island at the moment. So
yeah, and I'm going to double down with your statement. I absolutely think that this year was a success. And if you look at the impact that he's had, not only in fantasy, but in terms of the club, we've got to remember that the Blues aren't necessarily a club known for success as of recent history. And Paddy Cripps has been there through the thick of it. But he's been there through the thick of it, through the worst, and now some better times. And they're really starting to turn things around. People look at the Carlton Blues as a legitimate force to be reckoned with in the AFL. You can't come playing a relaxed style of footy. They're going to hit you hard, which I think they proved over the weekend, and they're going to want to win the game. And they're really doing that well this year. It is a shame. Hopefully he is back for the finals, especially pending if the Blues can make it, because I would love to see Paddy Cripps out there repping the Blues jumper, the Guernsey, putting it on and giving it his absolute all, because you can always expect 100% from Patrick Cripps.
For sure. What about your right and wrong, though? Tell me what you've got.
Yeah, what I got right this week, and I never thought I would hear this coming out of my mouth, but here it is. Downgrading my platinum Zach Merrett into a gold. And yes, I know I've said that. All I've done over the past 5 weeks is talk about how Zach Merrett and Rory Laird have carried my AFL fantasy and Gameday Squad fantasy teams. But this week was the best week to do it possible. As you mentioned, his worst performance for the year. So I'm so glad I didn't have the platinum dragging him down.
Far out.
Especially in terms of the salary cap as well. Because if I played the platinum Merrett, I wouldn't have been able to put in other players that I wanted to play. So yeah, in speaking, I did this move to accommodate for gold Treloar, who, you know what, both of them had slightly off weeks, but this pairing will work soon. I'm very confident with the 1-2 punch there from the midfield and the forward line. And that's what I got right this week. And again, it was looking at player performance and not the grading of the card. Similar to yourself. So yeah, I'm glad I could get over that hump, get over that issue there. But what I got wrong, and I just can't seem to get it right with this player, but James Aish from Freo, every time he has an off week, he's starting for me. Every time I bench him, he has a killer week and will get 20 plus kicks and score over 100 easy. So I just need to find this magic secret formula with him. I'm sure I'm really close, and I'll get back to you once I figure it out. But I'm hoping I can figure it out soon and starting him with some confidence, because my confidence right now is shot with him. I've got no idea.
Yeah, I was going to say, let us know in the comments below if you've got a player that always does that to you, because I always think we have one. That seems to hit us with that. So yeah, let us know who your player is like that, and maybe we can all tell each other when we're going to play them, so the rest of us can jump on it. But no, I like that. I like that. And with your team, I'm just bringing on the screen now. You had a good week. You want to talk about how you went?
Yeah, team performance review. Of course, I want to talk about the mighty Zeus Cannons and how they went. Finished second in the weekly competition this week with 1,963 points. I'll tell you what, it was very close in the capped competition. I think 100 points splits me to fifth right now. So, it could have gone either way. But honestly, I'm glad I pulled out a second place finish. I'm really loving the look of my midfield. As you can see there, Rory Laird, Petrarca, Bailey Smith, Zachy Merrett and Noah Anderson. They really are the keys to my success right now. I'm really hoping that my forward line can play a little bit better soon. But, with all things considered, a second place finish. We're still third in the seasonal competition. I'm trying to mow down the second place and the first place there, but they just keep getting a slight advantage over me every single week. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes in the long run. But I'm bloody stoked with how we went. And, Callum, I saw you this week on the leaderboards, which means you had a pretty good week as well.
I did.
Did you want to get into how you went and, what your thoughts?
Yeah, I did. We both had a good week. It was fantastic. I did want to just quickly say before we went on to me that you are going to get some packs because you finished in second spot. I reckon we should save them and open them in a video because I want to sit there and open them with you. Maybe I'll do mine as well and we can see who's had the better rewards packs, because I'm on the board there too as well. You can see I came, as I drum roll here, 8th this week, which is fantastic. I'm on the leaderboard. If you know, top 10 is where you want to be. Top 10 is where the prizes are at, not only in the weekly competitions, but this week we're actually going to announce what the top 10 seasonal winners get. Now, stay tuned for that. There's probably a post got to go out potentially Wednesday or Thursday. You want to be on the top 10 because 11th gets you nothing. Top 10, you're going to be absolute fantastic.
Where the post is going to be. All of our socials are down below in this link in the description. So yeah, go there, check it out, because this is going to be one spicy announcement.
If you were sitting outside any top 10 at the moment, highly recommend you keep an eye on that because it is going to be attractive. You're going to want to get in there. Money can't buy prizes, which are going to be really, really cool. However, looking at how I went, I did say I had 8th. I had a pretty just solid all-round week. I had some, Zach Bailey had a really good week. Houston had a good week. Lockie Whitfield finally decided he'd play well.
Yes, he showed up for
So I had a few dud scores in there. Nathan Broad I don't want to talk about for at least a week, but somehow got through it, got on the top 8, pushed me up to 9th overall, which is fantastic. keeping me in that top 10, like I've said. So overall, I'm really happy with how I'm going. 2 weeks to go. Going to be a big finish. I'm doing everything I can to make sure I'm still there. Hope everyone is still enjoying it and still in a chance with the top 10 at the moment, because like I said, you're going to want to be thereabouts.
Yeah, you got yourself a little cushion there. Moves up to 9th spot rather than sitting at 10 on the dot. So yeah, this is really time for you to put your money where your mouth is, and the next 2 weeks are critical to ensuring that you stay in this top 10 and that you can reap the benefits of these rewards that Gameday Squad is going to provide for us. But I think that's going to wrap us up there, guys. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for checking in for another episode of the Footy Gameday Squad show. This has been your review of the round of 21. Callum, is there anything you want to leave our viewers with today?
No, just continue doing what you're doing. Make sure if you do open any packs this week that you do submit them on our Discord. Tom's got Pack of the Week ready to go for our preview show for round 22. So make sure you've got your best chance of that by submitting your packs there. But no, all from me.
Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate the love you guys show. Until next time, stay game day ready.